Thank you, Mariella. So, welcome everyone to MusicTT's Reverb Music and IP webinar. My name is Kavi Sita Hal. I know many of you may be missing international travel, so I'll be your pilot today, virtual pilot, and we're going to traverse the course of music and intellectual property. Yes, I am an attorney. I'm an attorney with the Intellectual Property Office, and I'm a lawyer generally. But I'm also a musician, so this is particularly close to my heart. I've actually studied songwriting, so I want to join with you in talking about music and intellectual property. I'm going to start my presentation, and we want to thank first in the cockpit we have Melissa and Mariella from MusicTT, part of Creative TT, and we love partnering with MusicTT always. Today I'm going to talk to you, as I said, about music and intellectual property. Great stuff, great stuff. Just as a quick outline, we're going to talk first about the definition of intellectual property. So we want to define what IP is. We're going to talk about the types of intellectual property. We're going to talk specifically about the types of intellectual property involved with music, which is copyright and related rights and trademarks for the most part. And then we're going to wrap it up with a nice neat bow. I started with a picture of the Lord Kitchener himself, and he wrote a song called The Road back in the day, and may he rest in peace. So this is the road, and the road has been paved forward. Without further ado, let's go. So what is intellectual property? Intellectual property refers to expressed creations of the mind. That's from the World Intellectual Property Organization. You're going to hear me probably throw around the World Intellectual Property Organization a fair bit because they are the UN organization with responsibility for intellectual property worldwide. And it refers to all creations of the mind. So anytime we as musicians say, hey, come let me go and jam, like Calypso Rose have a song say, come let me jam. Every time we say that, you are going to create intellectual property. Now it needs to be expressed, right? Intellectual property has to be tangible. It has to be created. It can't just be an idea. It has to be an expressed creation of the mind, and that's important. It can't just be an idea for your music. It has to be created. Intellectual property is divided into two main branches. We have copyright and related rights, also known as neighboring rights, and we have industrial property. Industrial property is everything else under the sun, like your trademarks, like your industrial designs, like your patents. Copyright by itself is massive, so that deserves a section on its own. Music falls under copyright. So when we talk about music, again, there are two main areas we're going to address: copyright and related rights and trademarks. This reminds me of the two jabs, like jab, jab from Super Blue. Yes, if you take this presentation too seriously, then we might not get along well in this. Yeah? So, hi to all of you out there on internet land. Starting with copyright. Copyright is the protection for original literary and artistic works. So that's everything literary and everything artistic, not artistic only in the form of paintings or drawings, but artistic in its general sense. So, or songs, or TV shows, or movies, or paintings, computer programs included. So the computer programs that create games like Plants vs. Zombies. I specifically put some photos on this slide here. We have both Bungie Garland's Differentology, and we have Alison Hines' Road Girl being played on Grey's Anatomy. So that's where we can see the intersection of various types of works that are protected under copyrights and how they intersect. We have Can You Feel It song written by a local Trinidadian kid, and it was actually made into a Netflix film called Dolphin Kick. Hoping to see that soon. So copyright is the protection for all original literary and artistic works. When we talk about intellectual property and copyright, I like to tell people that we think of it as a very commonsensical, logical approach. And so we're just gonna break it down real simple, right? Might sound crazy, ha ha ha, because I have a picture crazy there. It might sound crazy, but copyright is simple and it is logical. Copyright is the right to copy. Wow, shocker. Copyright is the right to copy. Let's break it down into its main rights. We talk about the CARD or card rights: communication, adaptation, reproduction, distribution. Right? So communication to the public, adapting or changing the work in some way, reproduction as in reproducing it physically or digitally, and distributing means sending it out. So we have these main rights under copyright, these core rights, and we call them the card rights. Those are the rights of the copyright owner, and you could do whatever you want with those rights. You could lease it, license it, sell it, whatever you need to do. Yeah. As we go, we talk about what can be copyrighted, and there's a list. This is not an exhaustive list. It's a list that's found in our legislation, the Copyright Act, Chapter 8280. You could go up on the Intellectual Property Office's website and find the legislation, or the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs' website, and you'll see it. And particularly, there's one in the middle there, really important: works of mass. Works of mass is particular to very few countries around the world, and actually Trinidad and Tobago was the first country in the world to have works of mass in their copyright legislation, or copyright legislation. We decided that we want to protect works of mass. For any of you who don't know what works of mass is, maybe you're an outsider from Trinidad and Tobago, you're an international person. Mass is short for masquerade. It's actually in the dictionary. So it's work of masqueraders, and it's concerning carnival and carnival industry for the most part. We are particular in that, and there's another Caribbean island that has it. So it's very specific, and it's beautiful to know that we are one of the first countries, and then one of the few countries in the world that has done protection for works of mass in legislation. So copyright is vested in, when we talk about music, there's dramatical musical works, it's musical works, it's audiovisual works. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. There are a bunch of things in Section 5 of the Copyright Act. Check it out. I know many of you heard me say legislation and you went, what's that? I'm not going to read any legislation, Kavish. I'm not going to do that. That's fine. So you can always call me, email me. I'm right here in office, and we'll be happy to help you with it. Or you could just Google it, you know, and if you don't know how to Google it, then Google how to Google it, because you need to know how to Google it. What you can't copyright ideas, procedures, discoveries, made data. Again, not an exhaustive list. We can find it in the legislation. But I go back to the concept of intellectual property is an expressed creation of the mind. It needs to be created. It can't just be an idea. There needs to be, when it comes to copyright, there needs to be originality involved. So it can't just be mere data. It can't be legislative texts. Those things are not copyrightable. There's also this concept of related rights. They're also known as neighboring rights, and they are the rights of performers, broadcasters, and producers of song recordings. What does that mean? It means that performers, broadcasters, and producers of song recordings also have rights in their performances, in their broadcasts, and in their song recordings. So you think about huge producers like DJ Private Ryan or Jillian from Major Lazer. You think about performers like Kes. They may not write their songs, but because they perform it, it brings a quality to the song that pretty much no one else could bring. And it carries the song into a place that you, as a songwriter, may not be able to. So I also put up Alicia Keys there to talk about a local who wrote Empire State of Mind. Her name is Angela Hunt, and she's from New York, and that's why she wrote I'm from New York, Concrete Jungle, Where Dreams Are Made Of. But she's also a Trinidadian. She wrote that song. Alicia Keys performed it, and Alicia Keys is phenomenal behind the song because Alicia Keys is Alicia Keys, but Angela Hunt actually wrote it. So the performer brings something to the song. And then we have the broadcasting organizations who expend God knows how much money to have broadcasts all around the world, and so they have rights in their broadcasts. Now, I can't talk about performers without talking about Marshall, because, and this is my humble opinion, Marshall is one of the best performers I have personally ever seen, and perhaps one of the best performers to ever come out of our country. I said one of, right? So there's a definition in our Copyright Act of performers, and singers, musicians, who people sing, deliver the claim, or you play. So it's not just the person who is behind the mic. You think of all the guitarists who are crazy great on guitar and may not be singing, like Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix didn't only sing his songs, but there was a performance behind him playing his instrument. That performance is protected. So there are multiple rights in copyright. There's the economic rights. We already spoke about that. That's the card rights. Remember? Crazy card rights. Yeah, great. I know you remember. I know you all out there remember what I was talking about. So we have the card rights: communication, adaptation, reproduction, distribution. But we also have what is known as moral rights. And to break it down very simply, the moral right is the right to be named as the author, creator, and to make sure that your work isn't distorted, and to make sure if you want to use an alias, you can use an alias. So I brought in this example of Andre Jeffers. Andre Jeffers actually wrote Stage Gone Bad, Road March 2020. So he was the author behind it. Not the singers, the performers, who brought phenomenal talent to the song, but Andre Jeffers actually wrote the song. And so he has the right to be named as the author and the right not to have his work distorted. Now, he can waive his moral rights in the song, and that happens sometimes. I wouldn't say often, but sometimes people waive the rights to their moral rights in to be named as the author in a song. But he also has the right, and he or she, whoever the author is, has the right to be named as the author. And this goes beyond copyright, and I'll talk about the duration of copyright in a little bit, but it goes beyond copyright in certain instances. What needs to be said is that copyright protection is automatic. What does that mean? Well, a lot of people say, they ask, how do I register my copyright? You don't need to register a copyright. We used to have a registry a long time ago in Trinidad, but no longer. Copyright under the Berne Convention and the BERNE, just in case you wanted to Google it. And if you don't know how to Google it, I suggest you Google how to Google it. So you talk about the Berne Convention, it's automatic. And most countries around the world are party to this convention. It's a fairly old international convention. Trinidad and Tobago is a party, and it means that once you have created it, it is protected worldwide. How you express that protection is slightly different, and how you assert your copyright may take certain forms, but that does not mean it is not protected. So there are countries that have registration of copyright and copyright registries. That does not necessarily mean that it is not protected. The registration of the copyright is for the purposes of providing evidence that you have copyright. Yeah? So I want that to be abundantly clear. The duration of copyright generally, and it differs in certain circumstances, is the duration of the life of the author plus 50 years. Now, I know many songwriters write together, and you might have joint works or collective works, and they're different under the copyright legislation, but most of you might be doing joint songs. It is for the life of the last surviving person plus another 50 years. So you talk about the estate of that person being able to earn copyright, like Michael Jackson's estate is earning the rights and copyright that his music has had, and it will earn until the 50 years are up. Now let's talk about the copyright owner. Who owns the copyright? Get this question over and over. I need to know who owns the copyright. The general rule is that the copyright is owned by the creator. It's a general blanket statement, and that's usually correct. It's commonsensical, it's logical. Now, if it is created in the course of employment, then it is owned by your employer. Now, people say, well, okay, I employed an independent contractor, therefore does the independent contractor own it or do I own it? Well, actually, independent contractors are separate. Independent contractors are not employees. You're not paying their NIS, you're not paying taxes for them. You are simply hiring them as an independent contractor. And therefore, the independent contractor retains ownership. This is important for things like photographs. A lot of individuals think, oh, well, I hired a photographer, therefore the photographs belong to me. Well, chances are you hire that photographer as an independent contractor, not as an employee, in which case the photographer who you hired as an independent contractor owns the rights to the photograph. Trippy, I know, but let's come back. Who created it? The photographer put their talent and time into creating it. Yes, you did pay, and yes, there's an understanding that you will own it, and there is a procedure for you to own it, but technically, the photographer owns it. So make that clear when you are hiring videographers or photographers for music videos and things like that. You have to be very aware of who owns the rights and to make sure that you have the right legal framework, contractual framework in place so that you can ensure the protection of your rights in copyright. This brings us to the difference between a license and an assignment. A license, pretty simple, it's like a rental, and an assignment is a sale. So you could rent a house or you could sell a house. Now, all of intellectual property, all of it, all intellectual property are intangible assets. What does that mean? They are just like any other asset, land, car, diamonds. Diamonds are forever. Copyright may not be forever, but diamonds are forever. They are just like any other asset, except they are intangible. And would you know that the most valuable assets in the world are intellectual property? The most valuable assets in the world are trademarks. And you can treat it just like any other property. You can license it, which is you can give permission to others to use it under your terms and conditions and you retain ownership, or you can sell it outright. You can say, I'm going to sell my song to whoever, and you do an assignment for it. An assignment needs to be in writing, 1, 2, assigned, which is like literally signed. You have to do it in writing, and the person who owns it, copyright owner, needs to sign the assignment. It can't just be an oral agreement. Oh yeah, take my song now. No, it don't work like that. Let's be clear. An assignment needs to be in writing and signed by the owner. I put up this picture of, again, Angela Hunt, because she had made sure to retain rights in the song Empire State of Mind. And because of that, today she is a Grammy Award-winning artist. Yes, a local Trinidadian Grammy Award-winning artist. It's amazing when you know your rights, and she did have legal advice, and she knew her rights, and she asserted her rights, and she is now famous in the industry. She comes to Trinidad for Carnival. She did a song with Marshall. It was amazing. Check it out on YouTube. Google it. If you don't know how to Google it, then Google how to Google it. So then, okay, we know who owns the rights in copyright. We know the type of rights. How do you assert your copyright? Well, there's something called the copyright legend. Now, I know shadows are legend. And yes, shadows are legend. But that's not the type of legend we're talking about. We're talking about a copyright legend. And what does that mean? Copyright legend is this. You see it in a lot of books. In the front page of the book, it says, you see with the circle, and then it says who the copyright owner is. Let's pretend it's me, Kavish. So say, see the circle, Kavish Sitahal, 2020, all rights reserved. And you can go further. There's sometimes this laundry list of words that you can add. You can have that, and that's your copyright legend. That is an assertion of your copyright. That is to tell the world, I own this copyright. This is mine. I have the rights to do X, Y, and Z with it. The card rights, the crazy card rights, the communication, adaptation, reproduction, and distribution rights. That I have moral rights in this. And that you, unless you have my permission, you're not allowed to use it. That's what the assertion is. And the assertion is, it also provides evidence that I am the owner. It provides evidence from you to the world that I am the owner of the copyright. Now, there are a couple other ways to get evidence. You may have heard of poor man's copyright, which is you put it in a sealed envelope and you have it register mail to yourself, and you keep that register mail closed and sealed. And so should it ever be questioned as to whether you were the owner of the copyright, you also have the sealed envelope with a date and a timestamp on it. That's in the digital world, it's a little bit outdated. You can use your email and backup emails. You can send it to yourself in other means. You can put it in, let's pretend you have lyrics, you put it in a Google Doc, or you upload it at a certain time into some type of database, and there's a timestamp behind it. There's a lot that you can do in this digital world, and you can keep track of all those things to keep your evidence. There's another form of evidence where you can go to a commissioner of affidavits and get what is called a statutory declaration done for the purposes of asserting your copyright. What does that mean? What is a statutory declaration? It's a very simple document that says that you are swearing, according to a piece of legislation, you are swearing, and if you lie, it have terrible fines, so don't lie on the document. You are swearing that I created it, and I am the owner of it. And you attach a copy of it, whether it's a CD or some type of digital file that's written for a USB or something, and you name the working statutory declaration, you're going to swear before a commissioner of affidavits, and boom, you keep that statutory declaration. That will also have a timestamp, a date on it, because the commissioner of affidavits would have to date it, and you would have that date, and you would also have sworn to ownership of it. That's how you assert your copyright. In Trinidad and Tobago, we are in conversations with WIPO to have a copyright registry set up. That's in train, so stay posted on the Intellectual Property Office's website for that. Aha! So let's get down to brass tacks, the most important thing. Everyone's asking, okay, Ekavish, thanks for all this information. The information is great. How do I earn money for my copyright? Because I want to make money. I write songs because I love music, yes, so I make music and I write musical pieces because I love music, or I am a promoter. I want to know how to make money. Okay, so you make money first and foremost by royalties. So when you license or assign a work and you rights to the work, you collect money every time it's played, every time it's used, every time it's sent to someone for a certain purpose. You are supposed to be making money. And we're going to talk about piracy in a little bit that affects musicians making money. But it's important to know how to get the most out of your royalties. So we have two types of rights management. You have individual rights management and you have collective management. And rights management is taking your art, which is your music, you take your art and you earn from it, and you manage your art in order to earn from it. So individual rights management, it's where you do it yourself. I don't hire nobody, I don't get involved with no organization, I'm going to do it myself. There are success stories with regard to this. I wouldn't say that I personally know of heaps of success stories with regard to individual rights management, but there are success stories. One of them is Chance the Rapper. He actually gave away a lot of his music for free. And he said, I'm not going to get any publishers, I'm not going to do any publishers deals, I'm not going to get involved with any large companies, I'm going to do it myself. And he has no doubt made a killing and made a name for himself. If you don't know who Chance the Rapper is, Google him. If you don't know how to Google him, then Google how to Google him, because Chance the Rapper's music, phenomenal music, great rapper, won multiple Grammys for one of his albums. And so you can do it yourself. Yes, it's hard. You're going to have to chase down every single person who wants to use your music. You're going to have to chase down every single person who is using your music. You're going to have to organize contracts. You're going to have to do it yourself. It's terribly impractical for you as a musician wanting to make music to have to chase down these people. It's terribly impractical for the user who, I want to use this music. Let's say I want to use this music in Effect. I had to go to you directly to get your music, and then I have to go to an organization, or I have to go to somebody else to get their music, and go to somebody else to get their music. It's just impractical. And including the broadcasters, they often do not want to go to individuals because it's so impractical. Again, this is not to deter you from managing it yourself. If you think that's your port of call, go strong. But there are what we call collective management organizations, or CMOs, around the world. A collective management is where organizations acting on your behalf as a musician and acting in your best interest go and exercise rights in copyright and related rights for the works that you create. So you have a membership with them, and in your membership with those organizations, then you give them the right to chase it down. You give them the right to go and license it and use the music and sell the music for whatever purpose. License the music for a fete, for parties, for playing in bars, all those things. There's a picture of the Honorable Attorney General and our Controller of the Intellectual Property Office on both sides, the Honorable Attorney General on the left, and the Controller is on the right, and in the middle we have Ms. Sylvie Fomba. That picture is important with regard to CMOs because we're actually creating regulations for CMOs. I know everyone hears about the quote-unquote craziness that goes on with CMOs in our country, and to be honest, it's not something that is akin to Trinidad alone. This happens around the world. It happens in many countries. So we are actually looking towards the regulation of collective management organizations. And so that's also in train. Look out for it. And it's going to bring some clarity to the sector very soon. So collective management organizations, CMOs, they're appointed by the copyright owner. They can license, they can collect, they can monitor, they can enforce, and it's efficient. That's the purpose. You get lots of efficiency out of them. And you don't have to go around finding people who want to use the music and then organizing contracts with them and organizing deals, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do the whole individual rights management. You have the organization work on your behalf. Right? They usually deal with multiple rights, like the rights of public performance, broadcasting, mechanical rights, which is reproduction of physical things, CDs. You have performing rights, you have reproduction, reprographic reproduction, which is photocopying, you have all related rights. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 CMOs. Now, a lot of you hear about 2 major ones, maybe in the news, maybe in the newspaper, maybe on TV, maybe you see a commercial, something like that. But we have 4 in Trinidad and Tobago. There's one for reprographic rights. What is reprographic rights? Photocopying, real simple. So there's the TTRRO, right? And so you have to know if you're going to photocopy something, especially large parts of books and things, you have to go to these organizations. You can't just decide to do that because that is piracy, and piracy is unacceptable. When I talk about piracy, I'm going to blow your mind a little bit if you don't know about it. And it changed my world when I found out. I bet it's going to change yours. We have the other 3 organizations that deal with music. We have Awesome, we have TTCO, and we have COT. A lot of people hear about COT and TTCO. You might not have heard about Awesome. Those are the 3 with regard to music. And I want to make it abundantly clear. There was a media release up on the Intellectual Property Office's website. And the controller was taken to court for the media release. It's a matter of public record. And he was taken to court for saying the law. And the judge in the case upheld that it was correct version of the law that a CMO can only represent its members. So when you are going for a license, let's say you're a promoter and you're going for a license from a collective management organization, you need to find out what their membership is, because if there's membership in another organization, then you need to go to that organization and get a license, because we don't have reciprocal licenses in Trinidad and Tobago. Just be clear that you go and you ask them about who their membership, and if they refuse to give you a list of their members, then you should demand it. That's as simple as it is. Now, a lot of people hear the term public performance, and we often think about FETs, and that is correct. A FET is a public performance, but that is not the only aspect of a public performance. A public performance is any music that is played outside the domestic sphere, any music that is played outside of your house, your private house, and or in your earbuds or your earphones that you have in your ears. So if it is music in the mall, it is a public performance. If it is music in your barber shop, if it is music in the bar, if you're by Smokey and Bonte's and you're hearing music, that is a public performance. It doesn't even have to be that the person is there singing or a musician playing, That's not the definition of a public performance. Once the music is playing, from a record, from a CD, from even any of the platforms, you could have a legitimate joining of certain platforms like Spotify. I'm not in Trinidad and Tobago yet, but we're coming to that. Spotify is coming soon. You can have membership in any one of those platforms. If you're playing it in a public place for public persons to hear, then you are going into the realm of public performance. And you need to be aware that copyright is attracted in public performances and licenses are to be made available and paid for. Otherwise, it is called piracy. So, talking about royalties, you make the music selling, or you're thinking about, well, I need to make more money from the music. I just don't know how. Kavish, use a lawyer. Tell me how else I can make money. Of course, I will tell you how to make money from your music. You have to think outside just the music industry. Now, the film industry deals a lot with music. A lot with music. And I put in Freetown Collective here, where I am and feel the love, because anytime you switch on TTT, you're hearing these songs, you hear where I am particularly going. Every time TTT has the little blurb, you hear Freetown Collective song. That's part of the film industry. There are films that ask songwriters to write songs specifically for the film. If I'm not mistaken, Heathens by 21 Pilots was written for Suicide Squad. Now that song made it huge outside of the movie. The movie made it big because the movie made big. But the song itself was playing on the airways as just a normal song. And that was written for a movie. So you would think about writing songs for movies, hooking up with your film industry friends and your contacts and making yourself available to learn more about music and film and how you can get involved in that sector. Not just writing scores. Scores are great. Scores are what made Batman. Or Interstellar, particularly love Interstellar. It's not only the scores. There are full songs with lyrics that are written for music. And it could be songs that are already created that they want in their music. And we talk about synchronization when we come there. So, again, I saw Mariella said Soca on Grey's Anatomy. She said she's a big fan of Grey's Anatomy. So let's come back to Grey's Anatomy for a moment here. Talking about Bungie Garden's song Differentology in Grey's Anatomy. They had a synchronization license for the song, which means that they can synchronize the music. They can lead up the music with the actual footage for their show or their film. They took an existing song and they put it in. Imagine if your song, and that happened with a local as well, and in the movie I spoke about, Dolphin Kick. So imagine if people wanted your songs for films. The only way you're going to do that is to shop yourself around. The only way you're going to do that is to make your music available. The only way you do that is to tap into your contacts. So there is a huge market for music and film, right? And I think our soca music is just starting to be tapped into. So I want to go back here for a moment. There are multiple types of licenses. We talked about synchronization. There's a master use license if they want to use your track in full. And sometimes they could put your full song as a soundtrack for the film. So Suicide Squad released a full album of songs, existing songs and some written for the movie. They released a full album before the movie was hit, and that album was playing on airways. Why? That's music and the film industry. So think about how you're going to tap into that potential to earn more. When we're talking about film, we talk about audiovisual performers. Now, knock on wood, let me find some wood. Knock on wood, tomorrow there is a debate for the Copyright Amendment Bill 2020 to incorporate two treaties. One is the Marrakesh Treaty for the benefit of visually impaired persons, huge humanitarian thing that we're doing, great stuff. And then we have the Beijing Treaty for audiovisual performers, meaning actors and comedians, and giving them greater rights in their performances. Now you might think, oh, I'm a musician, so that already applies to me. Every time you put up a blurb on Facebook that you put in your face in, you're acting. Every time someone takes a video of you and is using it for commercial gain, you are acting. Every time you create a music video with yourself in it, you are acting. And you have to know that for other people you might be filming, because they are actors and they have rights in their performance. So now it gives actors greater rights in their performances, greater rights so that they can earn more money, earn remuneration. Because this, yes, it's about the love of the craft. Yes, that's beautiful. But you also have to put food on the table, and this is another means to put food on the table to earn money for yourself through your work. Another area, and this is an area I know lots of musicians who have told me, well, they don't really like to get into advertising. They feel like it's selling out. They feel like they don't want to get involved in that. Music and advertising is a massive platform to make money off of your music. I think about Marshall Montano writing a song for Caribbean Airlines that you consistently hear now in every Caribbean airline commercial. I would love to know what the deal was with regard to it, but it's amazing that he is a spokesperson. You think about B-Mobile and Digicel and the multiple musicians behind it. Advertising brings lots of income, and it's a lot of untapped potential. So you might think, oh, well, okay, I don't want to be a sellout. I think it's a sellout. I'm not saying it is. I'm backing it 100%. But you might say that. If you do, I would say, listen, you can connect with businesses that you care about. You can connect with organizations that mean something to you, organizations that you want to write for. And hey, it might be a social justice organization. It might be a humanitarian organization. And they may not be able to pay you, but you would get exposure for them and exposure for your music and exposure for yourself, and a way to earn more money because people play it more. You would have more people listening to your music. So advertising does not only mean that you are part of an advertisement. You can help a company grow with your music and help yourself grow in tandem with your music. Now, COVID-19 has brought lots of difficulties with regard to musicians in the world. I know that. And it's super difficult thinking about the fact that we may not know when next we can do live performances. But we have to innovate to survive. And actually in the world now, there are drive-in concerts. In the Netherlands, you can see that picture there. In the Netherlands, these are all taken from Billboard, by the way. And all the pictures in this presentation are used with the exception of educational material. Thank you. That's on the limitations and exceptions of the Copyright Act. Just want to put that disclaimer in there. But there are drive-in concerts in the world now, where you come, you park your car, and you sit down inside a vehicle and you watch a live concert. Or there are live streamed performances on Facebook. We have artists like David Guetta, Katy Perry, Chris Martin from Coldplay. You have these people doing live streams, not only for COVID, but they're doing live streams of their concerts. So there's no one at the actual concert, and so there's no screaming and yelling, "Oh my God, it's David Guetta!" No, none of that. But it's live streamed, and you have amazing concerts at your fingertips. We have to think outside the box here. We have to think about new normals, new norms. As the world keeps putting it, we have to think of new norms, and this could very well be the new norm. And we have to get used to the new way of doing concerts. Now, I also know musicians who are hesitant, to put it lightly, of going digital. The truth is, digital platforms are where it's at. All of these platforms are available in Trinidad and Tobago right now. YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Music, Deezer in particular. I want to just slide in a little conversation about Deezer. Deezer is one of the few organizations that give the artists that you are listening to, gives them money directly based on users. They've created an algorithm for that, and other companies are now catching up. You have Apple Music. There's another form that people are now tapping into, and that's audiobooks. You might think, well, how would my music ever be an audiobook? Listen, if you have someone writing a book and they're creating it in an audiobook, you can use the melody of that song for the audiobook. I can tell you, I use audiobooks and they have stock music quite often, or they would have musicians that they've paid to write music for their audiobooks. So that's another form of income. You could think about audiobooks, and all of these platforms are available in Trinidad and Tobago. We talk about adaptations of your music to make money as well. Have you ever thought, you have pan in your song, but have you ever thought of making a complete pan arrangement? Now listen, knows what I'm talking about. We're talking about making full pan arrangements for music. If you were at Mark Loquan's concert last year, I hope I'm getting my timeline right. If you were at Mark Loquan's concert last year, we had 20 years of Mark Loquan's music, and there was a symphony orchestra, strings and steel pan playing beautiful music together. That's an arrangement of the music. It's an adaptation of the music. And that adaptation, you as the copyright owner, or me as the copyright owner, you get to make money from that. So why not approach your pan friends? Why not approach even your viola and violin friends or pianists to do adaptations of your work? It's another way to earn money. Now, there are challenges faced, yes, and we need to work with internet service providers, and we are going to do so for the anti-piracy campaigns, and there are takedown procedures, and you might have some privacy issues, but listen, the new media licensing formats is where it's at. We have to go digital now. This is a digital world. If you're not digital, well, Google how to get there. If you don't know how to Google it, Google how to Google it, yeah? What's next? We're actually arguing for Spotify to come in the country, and I hope it happens. Spotify is one of the leaders in digital music. We're talking about there's IP education and training. There's a building respect for intellectual property video that MusicTT has done with Irfan. It's amazing. You can YouTube it. Go up, building respect for intellectual property, Trinidad and Tobago, and you could see that. It's an anti-piracy campaign. It's called building respect for intellectual property. So it's the softer side of piracy, anti-piracy. And we are working fastidiously towards greater enforcement of intellectual property rights. Now, I can't end without talking about piracy. Piracy, in relation to copyright, is exercising the copyright owner's rights without their permission. What does that mean? It means that anytime you use protected, copyrighted music or films, you are breaching the rights of the owner. Now, this is no indictment upon anyone who has done it. In full disclosure and honesty, when I was younger, I did it. But then I learned for a fact that piracy is linked, inextricably connected, and funds organized crime, including the illegal sale and transport of narcotics, illegal firearms, and human trafficking. Piracy, copyright piracy funds human trafficking. Every time you go up on a site, you are working with organizations that traffic human beings around the world. Every time you download something, there are ads that are placed on those sites by algorithms, and they earn money that goes towards their trafficking enterprises. And it would be remiss of me to tell you, listen, there are available platforms outside there, and it's not that expensive. We are working towards getting more in Trinidad and Tobago. I would implore you not to involve yourself with piracy anymore. It causes $12.5 billion of economic losses to musicians and artists, right? That's money out of your pocket as a musician. That's money that you could have earned, but you didn't because somebody is downloading your music for free. And if you have ever done it to someone else, it's money that you took out of their pocket. Many of you might understand what it is to be a struggling artist and to not have your music appreciated. Well, this is what it is. It takes away money. And that's a 2014 statistic. It's even higher now. Yeah, import of counterfeit and pirated goods, you're talking about $500 billion around the world. $500 billion. And yes, many of the proceeds go to organized crime, including human trafficking. So what are we doing? We are enforcing piracy and enforcing the intellectual property rights of owners, and there are hefty penalties. You're talking about $250,000. We're in prison. Depends on the amount, obviously. We are seizing and destroying. This actually happened in Trinidad and Tobago, where they seized and destroyed a bunch of CDs. Replacing piracy with partnership. Many of you, if you don't know what these are, I suggest you go and look it up. These is pretty phenomenal. So they actually started off in breach of copyright, and now they are one of the leading available platforms for music. So just think about that. It was a huge switch for them. Artists have been uniting. We had Tree Canal and other artists in anti-piracy campaigns. So let me just finish with the most valuable asset in the world, brands. You need to brand yourself. You would think, well, I need to figure out my brand. Well, what is a brand? A brand is anything that distinguishes you from any other person, right? Casey Candy is a really popular brand, but Sherwin Winchester has his image and likeness brand. This Marshall Montano also has done it. So you have your brand. You have who you want to portray to the world and your image and your logo. You can register here at the Intellectual Property Office, and you would have your brand, like the Netflix brand, registered here. So you make sure that other people don't steal your brand, don't use it without your permission, and it adds value to who you are as an artist to have your brand registered. Trademarks are for periods of protection of 10 years and renewable indefinitely. So your brand could go on beyond your lifetime, beyond your kid's lifetime, however long you want it to go on. In conclusion, I have a quick quote from Pat Patterson. If you don't know who Pat Patterson is, he is the songwriting teacher at Berklee College of Music. And he actually taught persons like John Mayer, crazy stuff. He taught John Mayer songwriting. And we all write. As musicians, you may be writing. Even as a performer, you write down notes about your performance. And he says, write fearlessly, have fun. I want to encourage all of you musicians out there. In this pandemic, there's an opportunity. It's not just breathing room, it's not just breathing space, but you have an opportunity to innovate, to write more, to get your music out there in different ways, to write music that means something new for the world. Patterson had often said that it is a job of songwriters to put words in people's mouths that they always wanted to see. And that's an amazing concept. And that's the job of all musicians, all the people involved in the creative industries, that you create an expression that people always knew that they wanted to express, but they weren't able to. That's our jobs. Yeah. So shoot me your questions. Tell me what you're thinking. Get us on Facebook and Twitter. We're on Instagram now. Get us on Insta. If you have questions, feel free to email me. My email is kavisasita@ipod.gov.tt. So you can email us. You can email info@ipod.gov.tt. You can talk to us on the net. I don't think we have no live chat functions yet. Hey, if you want to join us and create a live chat function, please join us. We have, okay, so questions coming through hot and sweaty. I have Kai. Kai, how are you doing? How does an upcoming producer ensure that his or her music is protected from well-known artists who sing on their music? So if you are a producer and you're having an artist, usually there is a contract that's drafted up beforehand, hopefully you do this beforehand, to ensure the rights. Now, these days, producers do so much in the music that it's not just a sound recording. Quite often, producers of sound recordings actually help write the music in totality. They would help write the song, including lyrics. So it's not just that you're creating a track, if that makes sense, Kai. So I actually know of producers who make sure that they have rights in the song, in the copyright of the song, to be named as an author. And that is subject to contract. So how do you ensure that your music is protected from well-known artists who sing on your music? You get your contract in advance. Don't send them your track just, you can send them your track and if they like it, but make sure that you have your protection of a contract. And yeah, in the industry, you would send stuff out, feelers, to see if people like it. The producer of Stage Gone Bad, if I'm not mistaken, sent it to Kes and nobody really knew. And then Kes was like, wow, this is an amazing song. I really want to get on this song. And he and I were sang the song. So yeah, that's one strategy. But I would always say, make sure and get your protection in advance, contractually. And those contracts, you should go to an attorney to draft those contracts, but they're not impossible to draft, and it's just to protect yourself to make sure that you are protected. Hope I answered your question, Kai. Speedily along, Mella says, does work for hire contractual agreements apply in Trinidad? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by work for hire contractual agreements. Maybe you could clarify that for me, but if you're talking about independent contracts, then yes, they definitely do apply. So independent contracts are specific contracts that create something specific. The person is not going to be an employee, and therefore they would have the rights to their creation, as I said before. It's important to know that distinction. So we have Kareem Brown saying, can written scores be copyrighted? Yes. No, it kind of depends on if the score is an arrangement of an existing piece of music. For example, if you created a pan arrangement for any song that happens at Panorama consistently, like they take soca songs and they create pan arrangements for it. You have to know that the song is protected by copyright upon creation. So when you write the score for it, the score is also protected by copyright. And if you do an arrangement for it, the arrangement can also be protected by copyright, because arrangement of music would form part of copyright because you put effort into it and it's a musical arrangement. If you're going to take arrangements and make money out of it, so you're taking, let's say, a steel pan arrangement of an existing soca song, you need the permission of the copyright owner in order to commercialize that arrangement. Does that make sense? Hope I answered your question, Kareem. Can you shed some light, this is Kai again, on split sheets and how it works? Can you just clarify for me what you mean by split sheets? If you're talking about sheet music, yes, that's simple. Work for hire, where you can hire. This is, again, back to Mella. She asked, work for hire is where you can hire musicians to work in a studio and they can't claim IP. Now, You can have a contract beforehand. Sony does it a lot, where they employ musicians to be top liners or to write parts for it, and you would have a contract with them specifically beforehand to state that their creations are to be assigned to you and that they will have no intellectual property rights in their creations. They will have no copyright in it. Does that make sense? It is important that you do it beforehand. Again, protect yourself. So if they come in the studio and you have that work for hire agreement, the work for hire agreement would look like a contract, and the contract would say that they're coming and any music that they create will be assigned and will be owned by X person for X amount of time, right? For the duration of the copyright, let's pretend. Hope that answers your question. We have Timothy asking a question. Instagram is now cracking down, limiting to 90 seconds each song. Yes, they are. WhatsApp is doing the same thing for photos, or did the same thing for photos. Or DJs doing quarantine live shows, playing music. Yes. How can or should artists benefit from their music being played on these social media platforms? Well, it kind of comes down to if you are doing your original music, or if you are using music that's available is someone else's music. So you're saying DJs. DJs, for the most part, don't own the rights to their music. Remember, they would have to get licenses to do performances, public performances, and that's a difficulty that you end up in when you're a DJ. So you think that all the fets that you go to, forget the live performances, there's always some type of DJ music happening, and there's always music playing in the background before the fete start and those kind of things. You have to get permissions for those things. You have to go to the relevant collective management organization and get your license to play music in a public place. So Instagram, yes, they're cracking down on it. And I'm going to say rightfully so, because they want to make sure that copyright is not breached. So I know that you can post longer videos on copyright. When it comes to DJs, there's going to be a difficulty for DJs because of the issue of copyright licenses. But I know persons right now who put up their entire songs on copyright. I have friends who put up their entire original songs protected by their own copyright, and they put up their original songs on Instagram and Facebook and those kind of things. So there are ways to do it. Yeah. Timothy, again, no, that's Timothy. I will answer your question. Kai said, no, not sheet music. I think it's a document that assigns a particular percentage of profits to all persons involved in a musical composition. So going back to your original question, Kai, you had some split sheets. So you're talking about contracts that give a certain percentage to everyone else. Yeah, that's pretty normal to split profits, just standard contract. So it would assign a percentage of the profits to all persons involved. And as I was saying before, quite often now, producers get involved in those contracts. They make sure that they are named as authors because, well, one, it gives them a longer term of protection, but it also gives them more money because they're not just the producer earning for the production of the sound recording, but they're earning for their rights as an author. And so they would have a percentage of the fund. So when you're doing joint or collective work, you would have these contracts set up. Again, I want to stress, as a lawyer, put on my lawyer's cap, always do it in advance. If you don't do it in advance, you might end up in problems. And you don't want to end up in these problems, as these problems are difficult and they don't go away very easily. They're difficult to traverse. So make sure and have your contracts in advance. Kai, again, how does a producer go about ensuring that their music is protected, even if a contract wasn't made between the producer and the artist? So it would be protected, as I said, on the Living Convention automatically. It would be up to you as a producer now to say, find ways to assert your copyright and to evidence your copyright. What that means is to send it back to yourself. You have your track, you have your original track, and whatever you created it in, you send it back to yourself. You have your WAV files, you send it back to yourself. You have your MP3s, you send it back to yourself. You do your statutory declaration. You upload it on some platform. You have a timestamp behind it. You have an email. You do the registered mail form and copyright thing. That would make sure that you have that stamp that says created on this time at this date. Right? And if you are creating it on, let's say you're creating it on a computer, your own personal computer, it would always be there, or should always be there, hopefully, on your personal computer. So you have that proof. You have that evidence of your creation back when. So that's how you protect yourself, yes? Does that make sense, Kai? Kareem asks, if you never registered your music and want to register it later, would royalties be retroactive? Well, technically, yes, but how are you going to chase that down, Kareem? That's my question to you. It's going to be hard for you to chase that down. You're going to have to make a list of every person that has played it, or every organization that has played it as a public performance, or wants to use it in your film, etc., etc., etc. I want to backtrack a little bit. You said register your music. I'm not sure what you mean by register your music. Remember, copyright is automatic, yeah? So maybe, I presume you're talking about registering with a collective management organization. Yes. You can tell the organization, let's pretend that you're going to sign up with one of these three for music. You want to tell the organization, hey, I was at X Fet and I heard my music being played and I didn't hear Kavish talk about this presentation with Music and IP organized by MusicTT. Shout out to MusicTT. Shout out to MusicTT. I didn't hear this presentation before, and now I have learned my rights and I am informed. Yes. So now I need you all to collect on your behalf. Yes, it can be collected retroactively. Where's the evidence that was played? And how are you gonna bring them to pay? And what if they refuse to pay? You're gonna have to take them to court. You're going to have to think about all these repercussions that are going to happen if you're doing it retroactively. It's always best to take it ahead of time and register your music with the relevant CMO. But if you don't, yeah, it's possible. Again, I'm not deterring anyone from going towards individual rights management. If that's what you want to do, please do it. What are the requirements to register with COT? Kai. I'm not caught. So you need to ask caught, right? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that you have had to have some type of recording of it and it needs to be released. I think, again, that is to confirm with COT. Now, I don't want to show any favoritism to COT. There are three organizations that represent their members. It can be COT, it can be TTCCO, and it can be Awesome. That's for music, and TTRR for reprographic rights. So when you're looking at the requirements, you can contact any one of them. Now, COT claims to have the largest membership, and COT claims to have what we call international repertoire, or they would have international reciprocal agreements with organizations, international organizations, and that allows them to have licenses from international performances and those kind of things. So you can ask COT about it. You call COT. I know for a fact that they are operating still, even in COVID, so feel free to contact them. And yeah, I hope I answered all your questions. If I missed your question, copy and paste it back. I'll try to get it. So I'm not going to read back all of them. So Mel said, rewatch the webinar and you go up on YouTube. If you don't know how to YouTube it, Google how to YouTube it. And if you don't know how to Google it, then Google how to Google it. Because, hey, we live in a digital world these days. I would also want to encourage each and every one of you musicians who are watching. Get involved with us with anti-piracy. We always love to get involved in building respect for intellectual property campaigns, and it's only going to serve you as a musician and you as an artist better to get involved with us, and you would have a better understanding of the anti-piracy campaigns that are going on, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but around the world, because we adopt campaigns that are happening around the world. Kai says, I heard also about producers registering their music with BMI and ASCAP. Can you clarify that for me, please? So you can check this with COT, but I'm pretty sure they have a reciprocal with ASCAP. So you can confirm that. I'm not sure about BMI, but I am confident that they have a reciprocal agreement with ASCAP. So yes, you can. To be clear, remember the collective management organization is only going to operate in the country that the collective management organization operates in. So COT doesn't collect for any other country. They're not going to collect for the United States of America or any other country. They don't have the teeth and they don't have the registration in those countries. They collect in Trinidad and Tobago. So yes, lots of artists, local artists, they register with international organizations like BMI, like ASCAP, and you're going to have to contact them for their requirements, and you're going to have to contact them for the registration process. But yes, it is advisable that you register with the CMOs in the jurisdictions that you expect to make money in. Before I leave, what's the most common mistake you see musicians make in Trinidad and Tobago? The most common mistake, you mean from a music perspective, as in writing music? I have a laundry list for that one, of the mistakes that I see musicians make in Trinidad and Tobago. When it comes to copyright, and the issue that they have is that they don't assert their copyrights, they don't know their rights, and I would encourage all of you to join in other webinars like this that we may have, and join in all the Building Respect for Intellectual Property campaigns so that you learn more about your rights in your work, because this is your livelihood for many of you, that you write music for a living, and that's amazing, nothing short of amazing. So that's one of the mistakes that you make. You don't know your rights. You're ignorant of your rights. And that's okay. We're all ignorant of something, and you just have to be made aware. You just have to learn. That's why we're here. Yeah, I don't know about rocket science yet. Hopefully I'll become a rocket scientist. Jokes, I'm going to become a rocket scientist. Publishing. Kareem, I'm going to have to ask you to clarify the question, because when you talk about publishing in the copyright realm, it could be working with a publisher or self-publishing, or I don't know exactly what you mean. So there are organizations that are going to pay you to write music, like let's pretend large organizations like Sony, and they would actually own the music that you create automatically. So you sign a deal with these organizations that you're going to release, and you write music. Now, the organization would own the music, and they would publish the music, and they would go about marketing it and selling it and registering it. You have very little to do. A lot of artists, maybe not now, but in the past, and this has nothing to do with Sony, I want to be clear, Sony's amazing. There have been artists who have had issues with organizations in the past. And if I remember, if I'm not mistaken, NWA back in the day when they existed with Ice Cube, they had some issues with their publishers, and they made next to nothing in terms of the money, and they actually, if I'm not mistaken, again, some of them left in debt. It's crazy to think about that, but the publishers taking all the risk. They're giving you money, but they're taking the risk in selling your music and hoping that your music makes it. Yeah, you can also self-publish. If you're going on the digital platforms, there are quite a few musicians now who self-publish, but you can sign up with organizations to do it, and they would help you through the processes, so you don't have to do all of the work yourself. Now, obviously, they're going to be collecting, and you might get a lesser sum, but they're taking more risk, and they're giving you the opportunity for your music to become even bigger than what you could have done by yourself. So that's the difficulty with individual rights management. Individual rights management, you're going to do it yourself. You're plowing away and you're doing it yourself. It's really hard. For me, the only successful depends on how you define success. But the only artist that I know has really made it into the spotlight and the pop world of pop rap, I guess, is Chance the Rapper. And well, he has a very interesting story with how he did it. So I don't see any other questions. So for all you attendees, drum roll please, we're done. It's just been just over an hour. If you have questions, again, feel free to shoot them to the Director of Property Office, info@ipo.gov.tt. All the slides in this presentation were used under educational purposes. We do not make any commercial gain off of this. We want to be abundantly clear. And if you noticed, I don't know if any of you picked up on it, I actually used a lot of album covers to show you road march through the years, from Kitchener to Calypso Rose to Marshall Montano, and coming down to Kess and Iowa, because I love all local music. I love what they do. Anyway, that's it for me. So peace be with you all, and have fun, create great. Bye everyone.